I'm so honored to present another amazing speaker that will bring inspiration to the work going forward. Eleanor Watson, or Nell, as we know her. She is, let me warn you a little bit here, she's an outsider in this case. And we asked her to go quite far into the future. So be prepared. She's an engineer who lectures in machine learning, machine intelligence. She contributes to the IEEE ethical initiatives. She works on transparency. She's been contributing to certifications, etc. She holds a fellowship with the British Computing Society, Royal Statistical Society, the Atlantic Council, as well as holding a senior membership within the IEEE. Nell, welcome to the stage here. I look so much forward to your talk. So before you take the stage here, I just want once more remind people, if you have a question, you can post it in the chat, and we'll ask it after when Nell is done with her talk. So Nell, the screen is yours, as we say.
Thank you so much indeed. We truly live in transformative times. Technology has advanced at such an incredible pace, but the question remains, how do we put humanity into that technology? How do we ensure that technology is used for good, for the best, to lift up the very highest elements of the human spirit? It is clear in the last year and a half and a bit that technology has brought us together in new ways which weren't possible before. Technology has helped us to reach into other places that we otherwise might not be able to be. And it's also obliged us to catch up with technology. A lot of people who might not have been willing to consider having a video call with their doctor suddenly are finding that actually that's not so tricky, and perhaps even that's a little bit more convenient in some ways. And these times are very transformative in so many ways, and they offer us a lot of opportunities. Right now, above us, there are thousands of satellites which weren't there just a couple of years ago. And the number of satellites in orbit is about to quadruple just over the next couple of years. And this offers us tremendous new opportunities because we can blanket the entire planet in high speed, low latency broadband for everyone. This means we can connect to places and to people that we simply couldn't before. At the same time, machine intelligence technologies are radically altering the amount of bandwidth that we require to have a video conversation. For example, we can have pretty much the same quality for 1,000 times less bandwidth. It means we could stream 4K on a 2G connection. All of this means that we can have connections into places at a much greater fidelity and much greater reliability than ever before. And this is enabling a new wave in telepresence. Inexpensive, affordable telepresence technologies, which can enable us to do good, honest work in another place, or of course, to go and visit someone, or to do a little bit of virtual tourism. And this, I believe, is going to be a huge wave within the 2020s. And it's going to offer a lot of hope to people who might not have had hope before. Around the world, many people feel as if their only way to have a better life for them and their children is to leave their community and go somewhere else. But with these telepresence technologies, people will have a chance to earn hard currency in other places and bring that home to enrich their own communities and to have dinner with their friends and family that night instead of necessarily needing to escape. Of course, we need to strengthen our other institutions to help people to ensure that they have safety in that society as well. Economic factors are only the beginning. We can use advanced technologies such as augmented reality to help people to train in new ways, simply by providing the necessary next step and telling them visually what to do next in order to construct something or to repair something, for example. The more people who have an opportunity to participate in these networks increases our societal, global, intellectual carrying capacity. The more nodes which are added to a network, an exponentially greater number of connections is possible. And this means that we can solve problems in new ways because we can harness the wisdom of the crowd in ways which weren't before possible. We can use these tools to have new ways of making decisions, making predictions, as well as new forms of e-democracy, where instead of a binary polarizing yes or no, it's a maybe this and maybe that. And everybody can watch decisions being made in real time, anonymously. And so they can take ownership of that decision, even if it maybe doesn't go to their first choice. They can understand that they were legitimately outvoted, but perhaps they switch halfway through and they're like, okay, it wasn't my first choice, but I can definitely live with that. These kinds of technologies can restore our faith in democratic institutions. We have new ways of understanding our planet and its ecology too. We can pinpoint and understand where, for example, trees are in ways that weren't possible just a few years ago. And this is also restoring hope. It's helping people to understand the depth of the progress that we can make, as well as, of course, the things that we are losing and may lose in the future. This information gives us hope and also concern at the same time, but the hope factor is so important. We have new ways of protecting people who may be obliged to work in very unfair conditions. We can spot where these factories, for example, may be based, right? Here we have a brick making factory and we can spot them from orbit and ensure that they are legit and that they are registered and that the people working there are working freely and fairly. We can do the same on the high seas in international waters where there aren't necessarily so many legal safeguards. We can find where people may be doing illegal fishing and ensure that their illegal activities don't go any further than that. We can understand the human cost of war to pinpoint where buildings have been destroyed during conflict, even in extremely remote areas. All of this helps us to provide an account for the costs of conflict and the costs of human flight, even if official statistics may say something otherwise. We have new ways of connecting technology together as well with the cloud. Coming in the next revision of the wireless internet Wi-Fi standards is the ability to discern backscattering. Backscattering is when the reflection, the reverberation of electromagnetic radiation is altered. Here in this example, there's a little cog, and as it turns, two pieces of metal come together, just two bits of metal, a little bit like a radio frequency ID tag that you might see in a library book. But when those two pieces of metal touch, that can now be detected using a standard wireless receiver. And so we can have just a simple little strip of metal on a pill bottle and know how many times that's been opened, or even put it inside a bottle, which turns as fluid comes out, and we know how much fluid is in there and how much fluid has been taken, without any batteries, without any electronics, other than the wireless receiver. And so we can connect so many more things. We can understand so much more of what is going on in the world. And this can help us to protect the environment and protect human beings too. With this technology, of course, the cost of machine intelligence has been slashed. We can now do so much more with the resources that we have. And we can go bigger too. We have an opportunity to create far more sophisticated machine learning systems. We've gotten used to the idea of deep learning across the last 10 years or so. But whilst deep learning is sophisticated, it is narrow. You can create a system to do something effectively, but only in a narrow domain. New technologies are enabling us to have a much more general type of machine intelligence, which is able to deal with lots of problems. Traditionally, we train a neural network, and the little weights between nodes are adjusted. And from that, a pattern is created, which can make a prediction or recognize something. These new technologies enable us to put lots of different kinds of data into a network. Could be text, could be audio, could be video, etc. And then using the same network, solve thousands of different problems. The weights of the network don't change, but we can draw inferences and make abstractions in that network temporarily, ad hoc, as we require. And that's making all the difference. These technologies are task agnostic. You make one model and it can solve incredible wide range of different problems. One model can take a terse and not very polite message and turn it into something suitable for sending to someone that you have friendship for and respect. One model can solve high school math problems. One model can take natural language and create an app out of it with all of the associated code that you can then modify further or take and run directly in a system, just from a sentence or two of plain text. These technologies are now transforming how we work with computers, and they're making it so much easier to participate in this tech revolution. We don't necessarily need to invest so much time and energy and resources in learning how to manipulate and work with machines, when simply our voice can be enough. Now these technologies are going to change everything in the world of video synthesis in terms of understanding problems, making sense out of chaos, things that simply were never possible before. All of this means that we can build stronger institutions, ones which are more decentralized and have a less of a single potential point of failure. We can take very complicated legalese and very lengthy and hard to understand regulations and make them simple, make them easy for anyone to understand. And then we can use this to refactor our institutions. In the world of agile programming, refactoring is how we describe taking a complex program and making it simpler, yet performing the same function. And typically when you do that, you get an ability to then modify that program a lot more easily, right? You can understand what's truly necessary and understand also much more easily what's missing and how to add those extra modules. The world of AI and IoT is coming together with crypto as well. And I don't mean necessarily just cryptocurrencies, but that same tokenization technology adds extra layers of security to technologies which fundamentally people have a lot of often legitimate concerns about. But through tokenization, we can have a decentralized form of security. We can align incentives in new ways because we can make it pay to play and play nicely. All of this means that we can benefit from shared knowledge, something so important in a world where almost anything can be counterfeited easily. And together, this means that we can increase trust and coordination, helping people to work together in new ways. And societies tend to increase in their complexity when trust becomes cheaper and easier. And trust is the single greatest predictor of happiness in any society. It's not about money, it's fundamentally about trust. If you believe that your neighbor has your best interests in their heart, you will sleep soundly in your bed at night, whether you're rich or poor. And so by increasing trust, human happiness can grow so much as well. There are other opportunities for improvement too, of course. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've gotten really good at making stuff, but we haven't gotten so good at decommissioning it again. We have some lessons to learn, some growing to do there. We've increasingly made the world often more luxurious, more comfortable to more people over time. And that's great. But at the same time, sometimes there have been shifted costs. Sometimes it's been a private form of enjoyment, but costs being shared onto others who may be very far away. We may not even realize they exist, but they still have that burden upon them. In many ways, it's about privatized benefits and externalized costs. But that's probably about to change as well. We have tremendous opportunities there. The Google Street View car that comes through your neighborhood once or twice a year, it doesn't just take photographs of your streets. It's also sniffing the atmosphere. And they uncovered that one industry, the ammonium nitrate fertilizer sector, emits 3 times more methane than all other US industry combined. And nobody knew. We didn't realize. But now we do. Now we can put all of this on a map and understand it in new ways, understand who's doing what, to whom, and to begin to make redress for that. I've put some of the examples of these kinds of technologies, which I personally find very inspirational, up on this website, pacha.org, and I invite you to take a look at it later. Finally, we come to the question of whether AI is likely to take our jobs and potentially displace us in various ways. It's possible, but I would be mindful that, generally speaking, AI is there to replace tasks rather than to replace people. And generally speaking, jobs don't just have 1 or 2 tasks in them, unless they're extremely simple. However, there are definitely room to be concerned, I would say. There's an unsettling trend of what I would call algorithmic Taylorism. This idea of scientific management, which was in vogue about 100 years ago, is kind of coming back again, but it's management by algorithm. And that's not necessarily a very fun way to work, especially if these algorithms are making decisions about your behavior and performance that may not be very transparent. You may not even realize that you're being marked down, so to speak. Machine intelligence often lacks context, and without the right cultural, emotional, personal, situational context, it's easy for there to be a misattribution of characteristics. And this can be very severe. For example, there have been incidences where AI systems have been used as evidence that somebody had been stealing, and dozens of people were wrongfully sent to prison. They were taken away from their children, their marriages broke down, some of them even took their own lives, just because an AI system thought that they were bad people. And it took years for them to be finally vindicated. It's a very cautionary tale. And once one has a brush with the criminal justice system, it's not clear whether or not one's judgment may also be influenced by some algorithm or other, or whether even one may end up with extra interest or supervision from the law because some algorithm or other decides that you are perhaps a person of interest. It's super important that we imbue these technologies with greater transparency, fairness, mitigating bias, greater accountability, knowing who did what and when, and respect for privacy. Not just keeping people's private information secure, but respecting the overall dignity of that person and ensuring that any information about them is used in ways that they expect and for fair purposes. I really recommend that you check out this website, algo.rules. It has some simple yet effective ground rules for how to implement technology in ways which are likely to be safer and more humane. I also recommend that you check out the AI Incident Database. It's a great resource for understanding all of the ways in which technology can and sometimes does and will continue to go wrong. Finally, if you want to enshrine humanity in technology, I would advise that we listen to the words of G.K. Chesterton, who, when asked what is wrong with the world, declared that we alter the human soul to fit its conditions instead of altering human conditions to fit the human soul. Essentially, we try to make people fit into systems instead of making systems fit to human needs. And if we can make systems fit to human needs reliably and safely and fairly, we're much more likely to build that happy, safe, and humane future together here on planet Earth. That's all from me for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nell. I want to give you all just 1 minute to reflect individually on the points that were made by Nell here. I think it's very dense content, and there's a lot to think about. So spend just 1 minute by yourself. All right. If you do have a question, please post it in the chat in Zoom. Nell, thank you so much for the talk. I can start with a question here. So one of the things that I think is part of the stage that we're in applying these technologies to vulnerable groups is we're insecure. We don't trust the technology. We might find ourselves not, with the competences needed to navigate all these technologies. And you talk a lot about trust as a part of this. How can we build trust in these in these technologies? How can we experiment when I know the consequences that you also showed during your talk are so severe and damaging?
Yeah, I think in many ways these are the greatest questions of our time, right? It's no longer a question of can we do something, but rather should we? Fields such as bioethics have had decades to wrestle with different questions related to the ethics of patient care, the ethics of organ and other tissue donation, etc. And those are now quite mature. Similarly, in the world of transportation safety, over the decades, we have become a lot more sophisticated in how we ensure people's safety also. We will do the same in the domain of artificial intelligence and other technologies like that, but it's still early days. We're still in the process of establishing those best practices, as well as the standards and certifications necessary. But we're making good progress. I have had the honor of participating in teams building standards and certifications in that space, especially in areas such as transparency and accountability, etc. And I think that's going to help a lot. But we will be chipping away at this coal face for a long time, trying to make our way towards that safe and secure future.
Thank you. We have a question from Vivian. Vivian, you want to pose your question yourself? So please unmute.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks for the really great presentation. And I think it links a little bit to what you've already been discussing. So obviously there are some standards or some organizations that set standards for themselves, but it seems like a lot of that is still quite voluntary. And so I'm wondering, what is kind of the ethical responsibility of the tech sector, or perhaps somebody else, to actually address these biases and to ensure that this is being used responsibly and ethically? Thanks.
I think it's very important that the tech sector step up and genuinely do their best to make these technologies safer and to create good rules between organizations in that space. And I think things like the partnership on AI are a good step in that direction. But unless the tech sector tries a lot harder, I think that we're going to end up with some quite stringent legislation. So it's either, do it yourself or else wait a year or two and have some tough legislation land potentially. And I think we could use some tough legislation, frankly. I think big tech has in many ways often been complacent about some of the effects that it has on people's liberty, people's economic opportunities, people's psychology and mood, as well as the ongoing polarization in society. And I think, they're starting to wake up to that responsibility a bit more. But in many ways, the commons has been polluted. Our social environment has been polluted by tech. And we're kind of struggling to work out how to put that right in a way that works for everyone and is maximally fair.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it will be very interesting to see, because of course, if we're only holding ourselves accountable, that is kind of a closed loop. And so, working on accountability in the humanitarian sector, that's, I think, something that we're looking in as well. So there needs to be some sort of link to outside accountability, I think.
I would concur with that, indeed.
Yeah, good point. We have time for one more question. So, Christina, you had a question.
Yes, I had a question, and it was on your talk about trust and So my question is, do you think that faith actors, faith leaders across faith divides has a role to play in the question of talking about how we create trust and hope and ethics? So yeah, that was my simple question.
Fantastic question. You know, I've always been a fan of ecumenism. You know, I think fundamentally we're all trying to touch that source, that same numinous thing, through some mechanism, right? You know, it might be religion, it might be science, it might be psychedelics, you know, but we're all trying to connect with that numinous thing. And I think that there are many different potential paths towards that. And yeah, I think if we can encourage faith leaders to demonstrate respect for other faiths and to demonstrate that it's possible for us to live in harmony and peace together, I think that can go a long way, you know? And I think generally speaking, those are helpful initiatives.
Thank you, Nell. Thank you, Christina, for posing the question. Thank you so much for being with us, Nell. We do the silent applause here. We are online again. It was a pleasure having you here. I can see a lot of positive remarks. Oh, there was another one. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the future of AI, both positive and negative aspects of that. Thank you.
Thank you.